I have spent the last 8 years of my life directly working in advocacy for active transport in Brisbane. Well, I say working, the time I've spent has been entirely voluntary, fitting around a full-time job and family. Link to help me out there. A big part of advocacy is spending time talking to elected political representatives and in the lead up to elections, candidates who wish to enter into elected office. The kind of advocacy I prefer and what we do with Space for Cycling Brisbane and the bicycle user groups of Brisbane is shine a light on who we meet with and what we talk about. There are exceptions to that, particularly as membership of committees that have strict terms of reference that require some confidentiality, but for the most part, I like to think of myself as a representative of the cycling community, and as such, conversations with me are conversations with everyone who does or wants to cycle more and drive less. Political representatives, candidates and their party faithful love it when you share their positive messages about active transport. They love it a lot less when you share criticism, or worse, the positive messages and actions of their rivals. One of the most effective advocacy tools we have available to us is community demonstration rides. Getting together with 100 or more members of your community on bikes of all shapes and sizes, putting rubber to pavement to call for more investment in cycling infrastructure is very effective. They are also significant undertakings for volunteer groups like Space for Cycling. Planning the route, picking a date and time that limits clashes with other major events in the city, securing volunteers to act as safety marshals, completing notice of assembly processes with police, promoting the event, inviting local political representatives and decision makers along, organising media, etc, etc, etc. It's a lot. So when a political representative themselves organise a community ride calling for safe cycling infrastructure and seeks the support of the local bicycle user group to assist simply with route planning and marshalling, you bet we're going to say yes.
So it must be a few months ago now that we did a similar ride. We got a similar number of RSVPs for this as we did for the previous event, but to have what I think is more people here today than the first ride is quite extraordinary. It shows just how much appetite there is for this change to be made. So give yourselves a big hand. Thanks for being here. So I'm going to, in just a moment, I'm going to hand over to Chris Cox, who is with the West Brisbane Bike Users Group, the West Bug, and also works with Space for Cycling, does incredible advocacy work to get this kind of infrastructure in front of decision makers and to push for funding for it.
And so it was on the 27th of August when State Member for Maiwar Michael Berkman hosted his second community ride for the Indooroopilly Bikeway, calling for investment to plan and construct protected bike lanes along Lambert Road, connecting the Indooroopilly Riverwalk and no less than 4 schools in the Lambert Road area. Now, Michael Berkman is a member of the Queensland Greens, and the local councillor James Mackay, as well as the current Lord Mayor Adrian Sriranganathan, are members of the Liberal National Party, or LNP. For those of you from the UK, that's the Tories, and for the US, that's the Republicans. The other major party is the Australian Labor Party, who in the UK just add a U into their name, and in the US call themselves the Democrats. These two parties, like in the UK and US, largely have a mortgage on winning elections at any level of government. Power generally shifts from one to the other on a regular basis, so they have self-identified as the parties of government. The LNP have a stranglehold on Brisbane City Council's administration, with 20 of the 26 ward seats and the Lord Mayoralty. The Greens have one councillor, and they have 2 members in the state parliament out of 93 members. They also happen to hold all 3 of Brisbane's inner city seats in federal parliament, but that's out of a total of 150 nationwide. As I've mentioned in a previous video, Councillor Mackay is without doubt a strong supporter of a bikeway along this corridor. He's a genuine supporter of active transport. My supporting Michael Berkman's community ride is not in itself a rebuke of Councillor Mackay. In fact, if the good councillor decided to host a similar community ride, I would be only too happy to lead the marshalling effort and promote it. You see, what often happens in response to events like this on social media is the faithful who treat their political party like their football team indignantly declare you have made active transport a political issue. Well, firstly, stop treating political parties like your football team. Your die-hard loyalty to your football team is admirable, because supporting them won't ever be actively against your own best interests, though fans of some long-suffering teams may beg to differ. Steadfastly voting for and defending a political party whose policies directly make your life worse just because you're loyal to them is one of the dumbest things about life in a social democracy. Now, I'm not saying your particular party right now has policies that are against your own best interests, but for the love of whatever mythological deity you may or may not worship, please stop voting on loyalty. But I digress. The fact is, active transport policy, urbanism and walkable, bikeable communities are political issues. The policies of those we elect have direct and meaningful impact on how we live, where we live, and how we move about our community. Those policies have the power to be transformative.
Thank you all so much for coming out. Yeah, as Michael mentioned, I'm Jonathan Sriranganathan. I met a lot of you before, but I'm running for Mayor of the City, which is exciting. But I wanted to talk today about transformation. And I think, right, all of us are here today because we want a new separated bike lane along Lambert Road and connecting down to the river. But we're not just here for one separated bike lane. And in fact, we're not just here because we want more separated bike lanes across the city. I think most of us are here because we are imagining a different kind of city with a different kind of transport network where we can all move around safely and conveniently without being afraid of being hit by a car, without having to sit stuck in traffic congestion for hours on end, without having to spend hundreds of dollars a week on petrol and car operating costs. The vision we have for this city is a transformative one. That's what we're here for. We're not just here to tinker around the edges. We are here because we can imagine a better city. And I think that's something that we need to hold on to, because so often we get caught up in the minutiae and we're like, oh, well, you know, one bike lane along Lambert Road will help things a little bit, but what if I can't even get to that bike lane? But it's not about one bike lane. It is about reimagining transport and a world where our kids can get to school safely without mum and dad having to act like taxi drivers, where we can all move around freely without being stuck in traffic congestion, and where our transport networks are sustainable. And I think often we forget that everything is connected, right? Like the struggle for safe bike lanes is not just about road safety, it's about climate action. It's about shifting to more sustainable transport systems that aren't dependent on fossil fuels. It's about building community. It's about creating streets that are safe for people, where we can hang out on the front yard and have a chat with someone without being drowned out by semi-trailers. There's something pernicious about the way that car culture dominates our city. And it doesn't have to be like this. We've seen the video clips from European cities, we've seen the visions from other parts of the world where people move around sustainably and bikes aren't this sort of second-class afterthought that's shoved over to the side, where two-wheel transport and I guess three-wheel transport is central to how we plan our transport systems. This is not radical, idealistic stuff. This is practical, evidence-based solutions. And that's why it's good to see people out here. But it's not enough to just come out on a bike ride one Sunday morning. We actually need to talk to our neighbours and be a little bit like evangelists about this stuff. We don't have to be naggy and preachy, but we do have to say, hey, we could have a better city for everyone, and we could have a transport network that works not just for people who like driving fast cars, but even for those of us who can't drive at all. And I guess that's the message I want to leave with you with, that this is about accessibility. This is about the right for every citizen who lives in this city to be able to get to the places they want to go autonomously and independently without feeling like they have to be dependent on someone else. And that's the vision I have for this city, and I hope you share it too. So thank you for inviting me, Michael, and thanks to everyone for coming out this morning.
Being able to cycle with your kids to school, or your kids being able to cycle independently, are not positions that belong to a particular party. It should be a basic right available to residents in a city, regardless of who they vote for or who wins elections. It's not an ideological position. But that does not happen unless there are people saying it should happen, demanding that it should happen. And the thing is, it's not the political candidates who are demanding it, it's the people. Just look at how many people turned up on a Sunday morning for this event. So the message to representatives and candidates of the LNP and ALP and any political party: cycling is a political issue. Walkable, bikeable, slower and safer local streets is a political issue. Freeing people from being forced to drive is a political issue. And it's something that people want. If you want to make that a key message of your campaign and run a community ride to demonstrate it, you know where to find me. Ride safely, drive rarely, and I'll catch you at the next ride.